because when I came home after 8 years, I paroled out to my brother's walk-in closet.
I still got 3 years of parole left.
Hello, welcome to From Felon to Fabulous. How is everybody?
What's up? It's Izzy, the intentional healer.
Absolutely, your host, co-host. I'm Brenda Ringwood, co-host with Isabel Black. Terrence will be popping in a minute. We've had some technical difficulties, but look who's on the screen. Andy Williams.
Hey, Andy.
Hi, Brent. Hello, Izzy. How are you?
Doing good.
So happy to have you.
Glad to be here.
You know, we've talked before. We've been on a couple of other little pre-shows, right, before we were really doing what we're doing now. But you've come a long way since we've even talked 6 months ago.
Yeah, there's been some changes, yes.
Absolutely. Andy, tell us just a little bit about your story. You did 26 and a half years. 26 and a half years. That is over a quarter of a century.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I did 26 and a half years in the Michigan Department of Corrections. I was released in 2018. I went to prison as a juvenile at the age of 17 in 1992. But since coming home, as you've already mentioned, I've been able to get involved. I completed parole. And since coming home, I've been able to get involved with a couple of different nonprofit organizations teaching volunteering, been able to start a business, enjoy my family. I'm now a papa since we've talked last, I believe. I have a granddaughter, and so
Congratulations.
thank you. So life, as you say, it is fabulous. It just keeps getting better and better.
Nice. Sounds like it's great.
Well, I'll tell you, the first time I talked to him, I was just amazed because he has this story of, a long time behind the wall. And he is so full of joy. He's not bitter. He's calm. He's thankful. He is doing stuff. He's giving back to the community, and we don't normally see that when people have done that much time. They come out with a chip on the shoulder, mad, angry. I can't get a job. No one wants me because of this. But you didn't do any of that. You came out doing something. Why?
If I had to boil it down, it's just my faith, finding purpose in God. We have different sources of joy, everybody. I mean, people find sources of joy in their family and just, different areas of life. But for me, it was God, and finding my purpose and what I believe is my calling. And just pursuing that. God opened up my eyes to a lot of things. I think all the time it did work for me in the way that it should work, or I think that the policymakers intend for it to work, as far as self-reflection and rehabilitation. So, thinking about your future and goals and changes, and knowing that you can change. But what I've learned is it's a personal decision, as you both know. And so I made a personal decision, even in prison, after about 10 years of serving my sentence, that my life wasn't going to be there. My life could change, and determined to change it. And so through studies, through my faith, and through attending church in there, and just studying business and different things, I have hope, and I've had hope for when I got out. And so when I was released, I was free to go ahead and act on all that. So when you ask about the attitude, and just so excited, I was so grateful. There's a scripture in the Bible that says you got to lose your life in order to find it. And I believe that's what happens to incarcerated individuals at times. I mean, when everything's gone and you lose everything, what's important becomes clear in life. And so
Right.
that was kind of my process, I think.
It sounds to me like you were activated while you were in prison, and it's a beautiful thing. But after activation's the acknowledgement of something, right? Because give us a little backstory. Who were you before? What led you there? And then obviously we see about 10 years in, you got activated and you live a life of gratitude now. And I applaud that. I mean,
Thank you.
but it takes action, and it takes consistency, and what we call at Activate Your Power Now, a power path process. So if you could give us a little backstory and some of that power path process that you've chosen to take intentionally with gratitude, and what has got you here now living in your purpose, it sounds like.
I think my story's not too much unlike a lot of other. Well, I was a teenager at the time. Of course, we all make mistakes. Well, it doesn't really matter the age, but when we're younger, I don't think we're mature enough really to understand consequences of decisions and bigger picture things.
Mm-hmm.
And like a lot of young men, I grew up without my father. And so what I look at, and I had a stepfather. I'm thankful for him now. He's passed now. Relationship was really bad, but he did teach me some things. And actually, he was the one that got me involved in church young, which I'm forever grateful for. But growing up, I was an angry young man without a father. I think the biggest problem I had, well, there's a couple things, but no direction.
Mm-hmm.
I once had a friend's dad say, if somebody would have twisted your tail in a knot when you was young, you might not have ended up where you were at. And so I didn't have no direction. I think that was a big part of it. And then just making, foolish decisions without thinking about consequences. And like a lot of people at the age, just selfish. And so I attribute that. So at 17, the other part of that, I believe, was just some of my peers and the people, even like now, when you living a life of success, you surround yourself with good people. Right. And, at that age in that time in my life, I surrounded myself with people that, were not a good influence. And so I think that added to it. And I ended up committing a very serious crime at 17 years old. So I stood in a courtroom at 17. I received 32 to 50 years from a judge, and there's no hope in that at that age. You can't even comprehend that. And so, and that was kind of my journey. And from there, I got thrust into a world. I did have I can't even say that I had a terrible upbringing. I mean, I have 4 siblings. My mother and father worked. I have a wonderful mother who taught me work ethic and just different things. And so it wasn't even really that, but I just, one decision sometimes in life is one decision. In my case, 1 second, because that's all it takes for a trigger. And it'll change your whole life and the whole direction of your life. And so I stood before a judge at 17 and I got a life sentence and ended up going into prison. And prior to that, have never been in trouble before, never been to jail, never been to the juvenile system, anything. So it was really just very serious, a very bad decision at that age. And of course you can't, it's another principle, you reap what you sow. So I never could get away from the consequences, and I had to face those, and honestly couldn't do that without God. Even in jail, your prayer is just keep me, protect me. Cause I mean, you're going to an environment, and anybody that's been to a correctional facility, they know the culture of a prison, and it's certainly nothing like what's out here in society. So you have to adapt, you have to adjust. A lot of things you have to learn, but by the grace of God, it's really what it is. By the grace of God, I was able to get through it.
Yes.
It's a big deal. Your grace is given to you when you're in prison. And when you're not in that situation, people don't even know what that means. It's completely grace.
Yeah.
That's just it. And until you can recognize that, some people will never change.
Yeah.
And, for me, and I had a great childhood. I still did 4 years in the feds. As an older woman, I went in at the age of 46. So I couldn't blame that on my childhood. That was nothing but me. So great parents, the same thing. And you're saying the same thing with you. You absolutely made some choices that landed you there. And we're not going to talk about the actual crime, but what was it like when you got handed a life sentence as a young man?
Brent, one word that people would describe it, just hopeless. I mean, at 17 and you get 32 years in prison, in an adult prison, and already jail was tough enough while you're waiting that sentence. So to imagine going to prison, it was hopeless, and I finally got to a place, even serving my sentence, because when you're young, you're pretty resilient, and I mean, and most of us, you can adapt, and you have to out of necessity or you won't survive. But I used to think, and I used to share with people, maybe even when we talked before, that, you get to a place, I used to say suicidal, but I've learned since then that it's not correct in my mind, because suicide implies that, you're ready or you would take your life. But I actually got to a place where I did not want to live. And so to me, there's a difference. And, I come to that place in my life, and I just remember, because prison is a place of adapting to new things, as far even losing family, friends, those that have been there know that it's just a process. It's a falling away. And in some cases, and especially if you're doing life, you end up utterly alone. I mean, that's just really what it boils down to. And some of us were lucky enough just to have a couple family members, and most of us, it's our mother, and it was mine in my case, that will still stand by you. But otherwise, you're utterly alone, and life is just meaningless. I mean, you have no purpose, no hope. You just exist. And in prison, that is prison. And when you're in prison for years and years and years, it really just becomes mere existence. And for any human being, it's just very hard to deal with and hard to take, that your life lacks any sort of meaning, that you have any hope for the future, that you're going to see it. And then in prison, there is no guarantee you're going to see your future. Every day, every day life is fragile. Every day, if you're going to be, you don't know if you're going to be able to. So that's just kind of the thoughts, and how, that's the environment I lived in, and how, how I thought. But it wasn't until I hit that point, and I remember it well. I mean, but it wasn't until I actually hit that point of just giving up and not wanting to live, and actually praying to God and just searching for meaning and trying to understand what I was going to do for the next 18 years while I finished that sentence if I got out. That change happened in my life. That's when I decided to make changes, and my first step was to go back to church and to get in and start studying about God, because just personally, I just believe that, after my experience, if I really had to boil it down, I've been to a lot of funerals since I've been home, and a lot of people have passed. And I know the one thing that people are concerned about everywhere, universal, when they're standing in front of the casket of a loved one or a friend, is they only want to know their spiritual well-being, if they'll ever see them again, and what's after this life, because nothing else matters. And so
You're
the
right.
sooner you can understand that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, you did this time. You've probably seen some things being in there
Yeah.
that long. What was the worst thing that you saw?
Worst thing as far as violence, or what do you?
Violence, how people treat each other, whatever you consider to be the worst thing.
So they had a popular thing in the Michigan prisons. It used to be, one, they still can. People, you get stabbed and things like that. People do lose their life in there. The thing I'll never forget, and it was, I watched another guy go after. I've seen this a couple of times, and in both instances were equally terrible. But where guys, if you've ever seen the master locks, padlocks that we used to use, the lock foot lockers and the heavy duty big locks, and
Right.
the thing back then was you put them on a leather belt and you secure it around your hand, and then you just start beating somebody in the head with that. And to hear that clunking of a lock hitting somebody's skull and watching their skull just rip open and blood everywhere, that's one of my. I think that's terrible, and that's something that happens. And
Absolutely.
visually,
I
I
don't
can
think
still
that's
I can
something
still
you
hear
can
the sound.
forget. Yeah, you can't forget that. You
No,
just can't. The skull can only take so much, and that's not something it can take.
the culture of violence, it's just that's the way it is. In a men's prison, men thrive on respect, and there's prison reminds me of high school in the sense that there's different cliques, there's different groups, and people. Again, you find your place, and it's a violent atmosphere. It can be. It's not all bad. I mean, it's the glasses that you're wearing, right? What you're trying to see. But since you ask, that is something that I'll never forget that.
Yeah, that sounds pretty traumatic. So to see you how you're serving and showing up and still holding on to that gratitude, um, again, kudos to you. I think that's great. That's pretty traumatic. So
And the
10,
reason why I asked you that, I'm sorry, is because you see all of this violence, right? But yet you still found peace.
exactly, exactly my point. You're not just found peace. You have chosen to maintain peace, to be peace, to serve in peace, to show up as peace, and I know that takes a day to day, again, a practice, a commitment. It's not, we all can surrender to that and stuff, but the story we have leading up to that is very different, and most people, unless you've been in prison, won't relate to that. I've never been to prison. I've been a corrections officer I've taken people to prison. I've watched them in the process of going to prison and watched them while they're losing everything. It's right there, real time. And, prison, it's already there. I feel like what I would see common was they were already starting to accept that what they were trying so hard to hold on to, they just had to let go. They had bigger worries to worry about where they were about to head. Um, but yeah, again, kudos, and we'll be definitely lifting you up, sending you prayers, and supporting in any way, with how you serve, because that's great. But I was thinking about this, and I'm like, 10 years in, did you not go to church at all for those 10 years? And you just, um, what happened that you, obviously traumatic stuff, but there had to be something else. Were you hearing a voice and you had been ignoring it, or What?
No, Izzy, really, it was just the fact of, just like I said, getting to a place. So the first 8 years, I'm young, 17, 18, 19, and you hang out with other 17, 8, you know what I mean? And play poker. They got, everything you can do out here, you can do in prison. I mean, they drink, there's drugs, there's poker, there's, you have friends, you lift weights, I mean, it's
Create a new life.
You create a new life. And I believe a lot of that is coping.
Right.
At the time that I was in, there wasn't a lot of resources provided as far as education. College had been removed out of the prisons. You couldn't educate, outdated libraries.
Right.
And the skills that they did provide, I shared this with a person the other day, is just they provide skills like cooking, lawn maintenance and janitorial, because that takes care of the prison. You're a corrections officer. You understand all that.
Right.
But they don't provide any meaningful skills. So, for instance, like dealing with technology, when I went in 92, there was no such thing as a cell phone. I mean, they had the big suitcase ones, but they didn't have a cell phone. There was no internet. There was so many. I could go on. We could sit here. I could tell you all the things that weren't there. So when I come out of prison at 44, and you're giving me a cell phone, but you're in an institution that denies you any opportunity to use that stuff, to learn about it, because you're a security threat. If you're on the internet or just doing anything, well, then you come out and you're totally unprepared for StreamYard and all, just everything that you're doing out here, right? So
you don't get to evolve with what's evolving on the outside of those prisons.
You stop.
You stay in time.
You're stunted in your growth. Absolutely.
Create a new life, which, like you said, when you come out, I mean, I have family members and my children's father and stuff that's been in prison, and but you see that when they come out, their way of existing is so different. So what's so normal, what made them cool? Sorry, I have a new dog, and what seems so cool to them when they were in there, the stuff they'd eat, or the way they would talk and everything, and they realized, I would see how real quick they realized, like, it doesn't fit here. It's all they know now, but it doesn't fit with where they're at now. And so tell us a little bit about that. One, you got life and you served 26 and a half. So tell us a little bit about that. And also what did it look like when you got out? You gave us a little picture of that as far as technology and things like that. But what about readjusting, getting a home, finding a relationship? What did that look like?
So I did have an advantage.
We're going to go to commercial. No, you're okay. We're going to go to commercial real quick, and then we're going to bring him back to answer those questions.
Awesome.
And that's a wrap, right? Tell us what you're doing now, and welcome Terrence Leftridge back. We had some technical
Hey, it's an unstoppable day. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Welcome, welcome, Andy. Great interview. I'm just loving it. It was so good. I didn't want to come in and jump into it. We, again, thank you for being a part of the From Felons to Fabulous show. Your story is definitely a story that is going to make a difference. It's making a difference in our lives, but it's going to make a difference in the lives of the people that are going to be watching all over E360 TV. But I'm going to shut up because Izzy had a question before we went to commercial break. So Izzy, I'm going to throw it right back to you.
Yeah, so we wanted to hear a little bit about a life sentence, but serving 26 and a half years. And when you came out, what reintegration into, you went back home where you were in trouble, or did you have to relocate? I mean, what did that look like? And and how long have you been out? Did you say that already?
Yeah, I'm saying. So I was released in September of 2018. I had an advantage in the sense that I have a very beautiful and loving wife that we were married. I knew her from childhood. We got reacquainted in 2010, and she was with me from 2010 to 2018. And we were married in 14. And she helped with my adjustment. Now, I feel bad for her because, if you know me, I had lots of questions and lots of things. As far as the adjustment for me, I can just tell you the one thing that really stood out to me that was huge was the bigness of everything. So when I went in, almost 30 years before that, you have a sense of direction where everything's at. And just, and when you get used to moving around on a prison yard at no faster than walking or jogging speed, to get out and be flying up and down the freeways and trying to get reoriented and reacquainted with areas and buildings that were there are gone, and what you imagine in your mind is no longer the same. That was a big adjustment for me, and that took a little while.
Yeah.
As far as the day-to-day stuff, I didn't know how to pay bills. I didn't know how to use cards. I didn't know they had video games and movies at gas pumps. Every life skill imaginable, everything you can think of, I needed help with. But I did get that help. I was able to surround myself very quickly after I was released. They have a program. I know Bren and Terrence, I've talked with them before about it, but they had a program called Reconnections in Flint. And it was a journey to an employment is what they used to use that for. And that was to help returning citizens, or, that's the new term, returning citizens, help them to get employment. And because there used to be such a stigma, that you couldn't get a job. So that was kind of the main focus. Like, let's help get these men and women working. But after COVID and after some things in recent years, the attitude has really changed, at least here where I'm at for sure, to where employers are now more open to, it's not as big of a deal anymore if you're a felon anymore. They need workers.
Right.
And so it's not as hard to get a job. So that stigma is not as bad as it used to be, because years ago, like I said, it was so bad that if you even said you were a felon, you were resigned to, if you're lucky, an entry-level position, hoping to find a place to live and still have problems with housing. Everybody does. But I think I'm jumping around a little, but what I understood coming out, my attitude, because I know you were asking about how I see things. And so when I was still in, I always had a desire. When I looked around, when Bren was asking me what's the worst things that I seen, and there's a lot of sadness in there, and there's a lot of you meet people, we all make mistakes, but you meet people in there. I believe personally that every human being is redeemable. I really do believe that. Through God, we're all redeemable. We've all made mistakes. Not everybody's went to prison, but we've all done things we're ashamed of. We all feel guilt for things that we've done. And so when I was in there, I had a strong desire to help the guys. I knew a lot of lifers that were never getting out, and I knew a lot of them that were good people. And in fact, some of them that, I actually looked up to, because I told you I didn't have a father. But when I watched them model, some of them that were doing natural life sentences and still modeling how to have integrity, to be a man, to hold their head up, to get through, to, communicate with their families and have a good attitude. When I seen that in some of the older lifers I was around, I think that impacted me. But I always wanted to help. And a lot of people, when they're in the system, when they come out in their mind, they want to get it behind them and they really don't want to have anything to do with it. I mean, that's the furthest thing from their mind. They want to not look back, put it behind them and move on with their life. But while people are inside, there's all kinds of complaints and problems, and people think the system's broken. And so from your standpoint as a corrections officer, you understand everything I'm saying. I mean, it's on both sides, right? I mean, you can find whether you're in your shoes or if you're the person that's incarcerated, we can all see the problems with the system and things need to be fixed. And so, there has to be people that are willing to do that. And that was always in my mind, I always thought that, I'm just going to help guys. But then as I start exploring my purpose and really looking at, what I'm going to do, one of the ways that we search out purpose in our own life is we got to just take a look at our life and see what's predominant and what we've been doing, gifts, talents, you guys understand all that. But, I just spent 26 and a half years of my life, almost all my adult life in prison. And so I just knew, and I believe that God was speaking to me and telling me that this was going to be part of my mission and part of what I was going to do. And when I come home, I was working and I still volunteer with a nonprofit. It's Reconnections in Flint, because in short stories, for the sake of time, is they're doing the right things. And the program is really impactful. And they, and so I was really excited to be a part of that. And one of my good friends now, and one of my best friends and mentor, was the director. He still is the director of that organization. And so I've been able to work there and just help, returning citizens transition back into society, right? Be able to mentor, be a life coach. And that's part of that program to other people returning home. But, when you start working in that area, when I came home, I started a business. I left in September of 2018. January of 2019, I opened a cleaning business, as Bren knows about.
Nice.
Still running now, still have employees. I had to build it up. It was a lot of hard work. It's still, it's successful now. I have a wonderful staff, a great team. And so, doing that, but now I'm working with additional nonprofits. So doors just open up. God will open doors. And I believe you both know that, right? So I had an opportunity, never would have believed it. And again, another long story, but I walked back into the jail that I went through at 17, and I'm now an associate chaplain in that same jail. And I go in and I volunteer every week, teach the men, volunteer, give them books, encourage them, shake hands. We all need that. I'm so grateful that I had that and people to speak into my life. And other doors have opened. I mean, since then I've been working with, I started working with Offender Success, which is just another Department of Corrections program in the state of Michigan. And again, God be glorified. But, they voted me in on the steering committee to help with the Department of Corrections. And so I'm sitting in now with, and only God could do this, but I'm sitting in with all the department officials across the state, all the way up to the, and part of the contract, I'll explain.
Can I mention this real quick? Because I think it's important for the people to hear. You mentioned earlier about a broken system, and I believe that as well. And I don't want to get on that top. That's not what I'm trying to say. But what I'm trying to say is, even with a broken system, one, on my end, you can be a corrections officer. You can work for that system and represent it. You don't have to represent it in their way. You can make the choice. I had to make a choice every day because I saw other human beings on the other side of me. I saw my family. I saw my loved ones. So in their eyes and in their stories and in their, in a lot of things. So I chose to treat them the way I would treat my loved ones, and the other officers, some would respect it. Some would not. They would bully me in a sense for being authentic to myself. I didn't really care, but the same goes for the inmates, the felons coming out. You can't be too prideful, with, well, I can't go help the other people because that's their side and I'm on my side. It's, divided. And it's like, no. Again, go serve. You can still, my
There
point
shouldn't
is,
be a
even
side
with a
unless
broken
there's
system,
safety.
there shouldn't be, but there is.
Mhm.
The workers see the inmates as less than, and the inmates see the prison system as a piece of shit. You know, why would they ever go work or be represented by them or sit in a meeting with them, like you said, go share space with these people? But the reason why is because if you think a system is broken, how do we change it? You have to be willing to step up and be the change, is my
Well,
whole point.
and, you know, and you're absolutely right, and that's why I love this show. That's part of why I agreed that, you know, you wanted, absolutely, because I think, Izzy, we're in a unique position, all of us that have been on both sides of this, to really understand how it works, right? So I mean, I absolutely can understand. In fact, my stepdaughter's a corrections officer. How funny is that, right? So, and she works in the prison. I understand both sides of this, you know, and to be fair, I mean, we got to understand we're a community, you know, but I believe part of the problem with the system, and I'm not going to, you know, I'm not just picking on the system, but it's part of it is it's been in historically, and as of late, it's been a philosophy of punishment and not rehabilitation.
Right.
And I believe that through the years, it creates a us and them attitude, you know,
Yeah.
us versus them. And you understand that well as a corrections officer.
Yeah.
And because it's a system of punishment that allows people in authority, especially if they don't know how to use it, and you know, so officers and things like that, to sometimes you know, abuse without
Right.
knowing, because we know that a prisoner knows that my punishment when I went to prison for 26 years was the loss of my freedom.
Mhm.
You know, that's punishment, and if you've never experienced that, then try losing it. If
Mhm.
people lose their freedom for 10 minutes today and I tell you can't do something, you don't like it. So imagine surrendering your whole life and just
Right.
giving up all your freedoms. That is the punishment. And
Mhm.
so for, you know, people in authority to do anything more than that and abuse it, that's kind of the broken part. But you know, we're in a day and age now, like with programs like this and some of the things going on, there is change, you know, and for different reasons we can attribute it to different things. Personally, I think money has a lot to do with it, you know, and just you know, you can't keep locking up. We have the highest incarceration rates in the entire world. We're the freest country and have the best system in the world, but yet we house the most inmates in the world. There's
Right.
something wrong there, you know, but it comes down, it's the people. It's, you know, it's people. So whether you're a corrections officer or whether you're an inmate, you know, we still have to, it comes back to the things that Bren teaches and, you know, Terrence, about character and integrity and having good
Yeah.
morals and values and honesty and community and, you know, being a good citizen and all these things, you know, and we all should want that at the end of the day. I mean, that's what we all say we want.
Yes.
Um, and the only way to make changes is just is to start acting, you know, and that's why
Right.
we're doing this.
Right.
That's why we go in, you know, if you can just reach one person, you know, if you can go in and just change, you know what, Izzy, look at the impact you have with what you do. Or Bren, you know, look at the impact with what you and Terrence, what you guys do individually. I mean, imagine if you can reach into the prison, and I'm telling you, like in prison, you have a lot of people that since everything's been stripped away from them and they've had an opportunity to really rethink things, some of them do value some different things, and they value the things that we're talking about, and they do want to make changes. And people that are in prison, you know, when they've served a lot of time, and any of us, I think, not just prisoners, but when we've done a lot of wrong and we realize that, we want to make things right. You wrong your family member, you want to make it right. You hurt the community and you realize it, and you get to a place where you want to change, you want to do things to try to make that right. And so a lot of inmates, I believe, returning citizens, if you give them the opportunity and support that, I think you'll get good results.
Mhm.
The
You are
problem is
so
we
right.
still, yeah,
No,
but
you're right.
the issue is we're still dealing with, and the battle against the system is just this, is that the reality is you still have to come home and face the stigmas. Like today, I'm a business owner. I promise you, I can get in a room and people don't know where I've been.
Mhm.
And, you know, I go to church. I've been in church for the last, you know, well, even longer. But I mean, I attend church. I volunteer with organizations, all these things that I do. But here's how bad stigma is. I could take money right now and pay you cash, Izzy. We could a year's worth, and you can take me anywhere and let's go get me a house and let's go get me an apartment. And because of my past, we can't do it. I don't even care that all the work I'm doing and everything that I do, because of my past, I can't adopt children. My wife's a social worker for the state. I mean, we can't do certain things there. I can't go back into prisons and help. Well, actually I will be, but that's a whole nother story. I am going back in.
But it took a minute to do that. I think Terrence has a question for you.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to jump in, Andy, before I lose my signal again. The show's called From Felon to Fabulous, and we've spent the first part of it talking about, your life as a felon. But now you've also mentioned that you had the opportunity to go back into the prisons and show how you can still be fabulous. So can you tell us, based upon what you were saying, you can make a difference. How have you been able to can you tell us a story of how you've made a difference of one of the inmates you've been able to interact with now that you get to go back in as a fabulous person?
Well, yeah, I have a unique, God has given me this ability because I can relate to these guys. So, people can go in and talk, and you can send social workers in, you can send pastors who've never been in trouble in their life, all these people that, and they do have the intelligence and, the background, educational and everything to help. But, it never resonates better than if it's coming from somebody who's been where you've been. So when I go in and talk to guys in the jail, for instance, and I tell them I just did 26 and a half years, it gets rid of any excuses. I think of Jim Rohn. I love him. I know he's gone, but, some of the things he used to talk about. But, if somebody entered a room of one of your audiences, just in a general motivational room and just said, hey, I went from broke, I have nothing, living out of my car. And in 5 years, I'm financially free. I'm a millionaire. I got 4 businesses, a family, and I'm happy as I ever could be. Would you want to know what that person knows? And I think in my position and others like me, I mean, it's not just me. This is about us and everybody else that's doing the same things. The felons that are fabulous, that are coming home and doing good things. When you can get up and model this and go into a room full of people and they look at you and say, well, you just left out and all these things. You got a business, you got a family, you got a wife, you got a daughter, you're financially free, you're happy. I challenge them. You push your chair out. When you can stand up and tell me you're doing everything you want to do in life, you're a success. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's just part of what we, some of the things we teach. But when you can do that in a room, Terrence, full of people, they want to know what you know. Automatically. Yeah. It's like, wait a minute. If he can do it. And so the message that I shared other felons, the same thing is this message isn't just for returning citizens or the incarcerated community or corrections officials, because what we're teaching and talking about here resonates through the entire population. Everybody wants the same things. Everybody wants to be free. Everybody wants to be happy. Everybody's looking for joy. Everybody wants, so it's, these principles that we're talking about is for everybody. But you can absolutely have it as a returning citizen. But you also got to understand the other principle, like Brennan and I talked about earlier, you reap what you sow. And because of that, there's consequences that we're never going to get away from. I mean, part of my consequences is some of these stigmas I'm still dealing with, because I made the decisions I made. Now, it's unfortunate. I was young. Too bad I did that. But, that's just the reality. And you learn to work around or use that. And so, but yeah, what we're talking about here, this program is for anybody that wants to change their life. And I hope that they'll look at, From Felon to Fabulous. And I'm hoping in all of us, all the individuals that you interview and talk with, I'm hoping they see a whole bunch of worst case scenarios and they're inspired, because everybody is inspired by an underdog story. Right. Everybody loves a comeback story. Yes. Everybody loves somebody that picks themselves up and can change their life.
Absolutely. Right. And I think you hit it on the head. When we talk about From Felon to Fabulous, yes, it's from felon to fabulous in the title, but we're not just gearing this towards felons and or returning citizens. Because we understand that there's physical incarceration, but there's also mental incarceration. There are far more people walking around free physically that are mentally imprisoned that can benefit from this show and benefit from some of the wisdom that you just shared in talking about that story. Everybody wants to be a better version of themselves, whether they are a returning citizen or whether they just had an aha moment in their life saying that there's something more than what I have right now. Everybody, I truly believe everybody wants to be fabulous in whatever that means to them. And listening to your story, Andy, and seeing how, you know what, if you didn't tell us a felon, we wouldn't know you were a felon just by looking at this camera. I mean, you're dressed well, you're speaking intelligently, you got more books behind you than I have in my entire house. So nobody would know that. So it lends more credibility when you can say, yes, I did 26 and a half years behind the bricks, but I came from beyond those bricks and now I'm doing even more. So I just wanted to make sure I congratulated you for that. And I'm being blessed by your story. And I have never been where you've been, and I hope to never go there. But I know that if that were to happen, life doesn't end there. There's still the possibility to do your time and then come back out and still make something of your life. So I appreciate you for that. Brenda, you got another question?
You know, I do. I want to know about this community work that you're doing. You're actually giving back.
Yeah.
Talk about it.
Well,
and why?
which part, Brent? I mean, I love doing what I'm doing.
I want to know the why. Tell me what you're doing and the why. So I have my why. I want to know. I wanted to educate people that felons are not bad people. There's some that are, but you know what? There's some people who aren't felons just because they haven't been caught that are really bad people. Bottom line is we are just people. I want to know what you're doing in the community, but I want to know your why.
I love to see people change their life. I'll give you the why right off the top. I love, you know, I had a good friend and he's actually passed now. He was a pastor. And he used to go in and he'd never been in trouble a day in his life. He was an educator. He used to teach leadership, all kinds of stuff. This was a great man. And he used to go in, and I heard him say one time, you know, he would work with people in jail. And he had never been locked up, ever. You know, he'd never been in trouble or anything. And I'd asked him one time why he enjoyed that, you know, and for him, he said that's where he's seen the most drastic change. If you want to see change, you go into a jail or you go around into this environment and you just get to watch it. You just get to see it happen when lights click on and people, it's so drastic to where, you know, people in society, I mean, really, I mean, we grow so slow, it's almost looking stagnant, right? You can't really tell. And it's hard when people are preaching and they want to see change. You know, for me, I just love to see people find purpose and know that they can change. Like I shared with you before, Brent, I mean, I do want to look back and help those that have been where I've been. And, you know, and we're rewarded when we give, you know what I mean? And sometimes it's like, that's what I have to give away. You know, it's
sometimes the giving is the gift.
It is the gift. Mm-hmm. And yep. And you have to, I've learned that, you know, you have to possess something in order to give it away. You have to personally possess it to be able to give it away. So if you're going to talk about success, if you want to talk about character, if you want to, any number of these things, you must have it, or you can't pass it along.
No, absolutely. So you
all the even right down to, you know, I still have a business. I work for a company where without the title, you know, just doing a lot of functions almost in a CEO capacity. I'm just living my very best life, and that's God. And I believe God gives me that to give away, you know, just to show others that, you know what, you can have it. If I can have it, if I can be blessed, if I can have peace of mind, that is even like scripture, it surpasses all understanding. It don't make any sense.
Yes.
if I can be happy, I promise you, you can have it. That's just all there is to it. And you know,
But you made
and
the
for any
decision
person that
to be happy.
yeah, and for anybody that comes and asks me, I'll point them in the direction and show them and help them and everything else. You know what I mean? So, and I know you would too.
So you
So
just
you
said,
did
so
this. So
if they
if
come
they
to
come
you,
to you,
you point
you
them in the
point
right
them in the
direction.
right direction.
When
I'm
you
sorry,
start,
You
you
start.
it,
Somebody's got
it,
some echo
feedback.
feedback there.
it broke up a little bit.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
heard it.
I heard it.
It's
It's
echoing.
echoing.
Are we good?
Are we good?
I can hear.
No.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Okay,
so
so
earlier
earlier
you
you
were just
just
saying if
finished saying
someone
if
comes
someone
to
comes
you,
to
you
you,
can
you
lead them in the
lead them
right.
in the right.
Earlier you
Earlier you
said
said
that
that
prison
prison
was a
was
lack
a
of
lack of
direction in life.
in life.
You were
You were
selfish
selfish
and you
and
lacked
you
it
lacked it.
is what I
Is
wrote
what I
down.
wrote down.
But
But
you lacked
you lacked
direction, and
direction,
now
and
that's
now
what
that's
how do
what
you
I
give
can
back.
give back.
I
I
think
think that
you
you
wanted.
wanted to.
Izzy, if I could, I don't know why, but you're breaking up. Bren, can somebody just reiterate what she said real quick, and I'm happy to answer.
Well, she said
Well,
basically that you made some choices. I'm doing the same
doing
thing,
the
so
same
I don't
thing,
know what's
so I
going
don't
on
know
with
what's
the
going on
feedback.
with the feedback.
Hear her?
I can hear her, but now the feedback's gone. It's probably from your phone. That's okay. No, you can't hear us. Yes, your phone went off. I tell you what we're gonna do. We're gonna go to commercial. We've got just a couple minutes left. Andy cannot hear us, so this is just the joys of technology. I'm going to play a commercial, and then we're going to come back and finish the show. Actually, I don't even know if we'll do a commercial. Let's just go ahead and talk a little bit. I know Andy can't hear us, but Isabel, what was your takeaway with Andy? Because we've got like 4 minutes.
My takeaway was, again, your story is your pathway to purpose, as we believe at Activate Your Power Now, because he had no direction and he ended up in prison. But that's what he gives people now, direction. He had to be at a loss of direction before he can know how to direct people to peace. So I think it's beautiful.
It absolutely was. And,
It
you
reminded me, to serve in that way. What's my biggest pain point? Because that's what I'm being prepped for by God. So I can go out there and serve others because I can share that testimony.
And that's exactly right. And I had that same aha moment. I was already a believer. But when I went in, I was still pointing fingers. And I was blaming myself and blaming everybody else and not taking responsibility for my own actions. But once I said, no more, I'm going to change. I'm going to come out a different person. I was at peace. And I came out at peace, and I came out making a difference. And it was hard because my mindset was not good coming out. I struggled. I didn't feel that I was good enough. I didn't feel that I could do what I'm doing now because what would people think? I messed up my life. But the reality is it's what I'm doing now that is the testimony.
And we are
Because
so glad
everybody makes mistakes. Absolutely.
We're so glad you're
Absolutely.
doing it. Thank you. As the professor of change, you're leading the way and showing people that change is real. Like you said, redemption is within all of us. Yes, change is within all of us, but what's required, we're all fabulous. Even these felons, they were fabulous before they ever were a felon. It was just the lack of awareness. They didn't know, and because they didn't know, they couldn't act fabulous. So
That's
they
right.
shrunk themselves and then found themselves in places they had to be there. It's their story, but we would rather them not have to go through that. But
I tell people I don't ever want to go back, but I'm really glad that I went because it made me change my priorities. It made me change my priorities. It made me change my mindset. And when you change your mindset, what do? We change our
life.
actions. And that's what changes your life. Change your mindset, change your actions, change your life.
Yeah.
That is what we do at BTBY. If you want to know more about becoming the better you, because that is our parent company from Felon to Fabulous, or from Felon to Fabulous, go on over to comechangeyourlife.com.
Yes. And trust me, your life will be changed.
Absolutely. So we've got about a minute left, and we'll air our beautiful little ending commercial. But going over to from Felon to Fabulous.com, from Felon to Fabulous.com. If you want to be interviewed, fill out the form. We'll get right back to you usually within, I would say, half a day, up to 24 hours, and we'll see if you have the qualifications to be on the show. And if you do, then we would love to interview you. Yes, from Felon to Fabulous.com. Thanks, guys, for watching. I appreciate it. We're going to play the last exit out. Stay tuned for more fabulous episodes of From Felons Who Went Fabulous. Or do you want to be the person that's helpful, that soothes, that loves? Because you can still stand tall and be as big as you want to be when you are this person.